All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning into the first of our new webinar series for busy lawyers. These new monthly webinars are designed to bring you practical information in about 20 to 30 minutes that you can implement immediately into your practice. And today I'm excited to have Baran, the content director for Rocket Matter, presenting our first webinar on rethinking your marketing strategy to maximize results by infusing your marketing with purpose and grit. Tim is a frequent speaker and writer, consistently producing excellent content for lawyers. If you haven't already read his work, make sure to take a look at the Rocket Matter Legal Productivity blog after this webinar. And before I turn it over to Tim, I'd just like to let you know that we will have time at the end to take questions from attendees. So at any point during the webinar, please put the questions that you have into the chat box, and then I will relay those to Tim at the very end. And so, Tim, I'd like to hand it right over to you to get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Heidi. And let's get right to it because we started about maybe like about a minute late or so. And it's an honor to be on the inaugural new format, Heidi. So listen, I just want to do one thing here, and you can let me know, Heidi, if what you see, I want to put this slideshow in presenter mode, but since I'm sharing my screen, you might see both slides. Are you seeing just one slide or two slides?
So I see presenter mode. So I think you may need to swap your display.
Yeah, so I'm going to swap. So so we're going to be doing this by the seat of our pants here. So two things that I'm going to talk about during this presentation is content and community, right? But in preparation for this, and some of the conversation that we had around this was content and community. How do you do that? You need purpose and you need grit. So let's just cover those two things really quickly. So what is the purpose of your marketing efforts, right? So your purpose is to get more clients, and your purpose is to get maybe referrals from attorneys. But what is the overreaching purpose? It's to build relationships. Once you start building relationships, all of these things, all of your efforts are going to pay off eventually. And grit, now, the reason why I have a 2-year commitment down there, grit is, there's a woman who wrote a book, Angela Duckworth, on I think it's something about good to grit or something like that. But she's really, I do recommend, if you look up Angela Duckworth, check out the book. It's really cool. So grit is, it's not necessarily a recipe for success. So it doesn't guarantee success, right? So it's something that you have passion around and that you have commitment around, right? But very few successes happen without grit. So, right, even though it's not a recipe or it's not a guarantee for success, because there are other things that come into play, there's luck, there's a lot of different issues that come into play. But if you have that, then at least you have one of the building blocks for success. So a couple of days ago, I was meeting a friend for dinner, and she was talking about she'd gotten into some money from a case, from a contingency case. And she's like, maybe I should devote a third of that to my marketing efforts. It's about 20K or so. And she goes, well, Tim, what should I do? And I told her, I said, look, don't think about, she goes, oh, websites are so expensive. You know, all of these different things that people talk to me about are so expensive, it'll take the majority of that money. And I said, don't think about sinking that money into any one effort. Think about a 2-year plan. This is how marketing works, right? This is how your building relationships work. This is how paying off relationships work over the course of time. This is how you will be able to measure and adjust on the fly as you go. So think about marketing as in terms of grit, as a 2-year commitment. And they said, look, just $800 a month. If you're thinking of putting $20,000 into a fabulous website or something like that, no, just break it down into $800 a month and commit to that and figure out how you're going to allocate that. But the main thing is, what you want is a 2-year commitment. Now, on to the meat and potatoes of this, which is content and community. And without one doesn't function as well without the other, certainly not in today's world. So we're going to talk about how to create content and the synergy and how you can use that with building and nurturing community that will pay off in building relationships and in getting clients, right? So, I don't know, one of your native sons, Baran wrote, I think it was just a couple of weeks ago on his blog about a survey that Thomson Reuters did, and they surveyed solos and small firms, and they identified small firms of up to 30 attorneys, or 29 attorneys, less than 30, and they asked what was the greatest challenges facing firms. So there are a lot of different challenges, but the number one challenge was acquiring new clients. So this is top of mind for everyone. Just a quick note, as I go along here, please feel free to stop me at any time. We have a bit of content to cover, and I have a bunch of slides, but I want this to go in a direction where it can offer the most value. So if there's something that you want me to go deep on, or a direction that you want me to go, I'm totally willing to do that, right? So we're gonna definitely stick around at the end for additional questions, but during the webinar, please feel free to interrupt me, and I'll pause sometimes and ask Heidi if there are any questions. So let's go to content. Now, about a month ago, I was at a conference, and on the panel were general counsels from major companies, and some from some smaller companies too. And the one thing that they said universally was that even if a law firm submits an RFP, the one way that they validate this law firm is they go looking for content. They look for stuff online. This is not just on that panel. Almost everything that you read these days, not just from corporate counsel, but from individuals. The other thing that I want to note about this presentation, I've done a few presentations this year across the country, and a lot of the times the audience are both solos and small firms. And earlier on, I would address it to small firms and say, oh, well, you know what? Solos could maybe adapt on a smaller scale. But I want to do the opposite with this, because it applies, a lot of these questions and a lot of these concerns are especially true for solos. And I would say that whatever concepts that we talk about here can be adapted on a larger scale for small firms. So we're going to go with that. One of the things that everyone tells you to do is produce a lot of content. How can you if you are serving clients? You don't want to go and outsource content, right? You don't want someone else to write something for you and appropriate it on your blog as something that you said. Can you have help writing? Absolutely. But you want to produce less content, right? This is probably counter to almost everything that you hear. So I would say produce less content, but you're not going to be losing out, because find ways, and we're going to go over this, to repurpose that content into different formats, onto different platforms, so that you continue gaining a wide exposure and platforms and opportunities to engage. So the other side of this is, here are general counsels on one side saying, and not just general counsel, but the individual saying, hey, the way we find you and the way we validate you is through content. Now, here's another side of it, right? One general counsel, and who is now a CEO of a corporation, said it is an effective way, but it also is a way to tell him who not to hire. So this goes to what I just said about creating less content. Create content that's useful, that's actionable, not just to put something out there so that you get traffic to your website, so that you get traffic to your blog, so that you get links to other things. Put out stuff that's useful and relevant. Now, there are a wide variety of platforms and formats that you can use when creating content. But in this context of repurposing, creating once and then repurposing, here are some of the primary. Now, this can go on and on, but I wanted to just narrow this down to a few core content formats that anyone could do, right? You have an hour at the end of the day, you wake up an hour earlier to do something in the morning, you work with an outsourcing, you go into Upwork and you work with someone. These are the content formats. A website and a blog, certainly a website is a no-brainer. You should have a website. And there are entire, conferences just based on how to create a website. But you need to know some of the basics. It's imperative, I would say, in today's world that you have a blog. Now, a few other formats or content, or places that you can create content are webinars. We're going to talk a little bit about this a little bit later. So webinars, from that webinar, you can break this up into video snippets. All that content that you have on your website and blog, and from those webinars, you can create an ebook or a white paper. You can create maybe a 20-page ebook, a 2-page white paper. From that, you can also create an infographic. One of the things that we found is that anything that's visual is very appealing. So even if you had, let's say, the 5 best ways to do something, or here are the 3 answers to this problem, if you reformat that into an infographic, it gives it a lot more. So you put out a blog post on the content itself, on the topic itself, recreate an infographic maybe a month or 2 later, you've repurposed that content. And I got to tell you, newsletters, I know it's unsexy, and I know it's old school, but it's one of the most effective ways to keep your content, to keep your name on top of mind for current clients and potential clients. One of the things that I was reading a book the other day, an article the other day, and this guy he wrote a book called something about habit-forming processes or habit-forming products. And it's all about trying to get in front of potential clients, potential referral sources that will allow them to think of you when they have a problem. The one thing you don't want is for no potential client wants to have the need for a lawyer as a habit, right? So, but they need to know who to call when they do have that problem. So all of these things that we're talking about, content formats, it's about keeping on top of mind, right? Not just with potential clients, but with fellow attorneys who can refer cases to you. And finally, an FAQ page. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can use a frequently asked questions page on your website, which is enormously useful for driving traffic and for search engine results, SEO. But also, it allows you to put yourself out there as not just an expert, but as helping folks, right? What do you do on all of these formats, in a webinar, on a blog post? After time constraints, the second biggest problem, or not really excuse, because it's valid, that comes up when I talk on this topic to attorneys is, what do I write about? So you want to answer a question or solve a problem. So I would say a good habit to get into is every time a client asks you a question, a fellow attorney asks you a question that's related to what you do, every time you read something and you're like, whoa, people have a problem with that, how can I answer it? Make a list of that. And each of those becomes an idea or potential blog post. Give tech tips. So many of you may have heard of, let's say, Mac Lawyer. You may not know who Ben Stevenson is, but you know something called Mac Lawyer. You may not know who Jeff Richardson is, but you know a blog called iPhone JD. And when these are the tech tools that these lawyers use, one is a family lawyer, and all of a sudden you get to know that person, and they become a trusted source. So then you check out their site, then you start talking to them, then you build that relationship, and then you refer cases or potential issues to these lawyers. So just because it's not completely related to what you're doing, if it relates to your practice, remember, you do need to know, you do need to build up that trust and that relationship with other lawyers too. And one of the things that I think works really well, and a few years ago, it's something that I jumped on a little bit, and this is newsjacking. So if there's a decision, it could be on the national level, on a state level, on a local level. If there's something that you find that you can write about, or that you discover that either one of your clients, it affects one of your clients, or a case that you're working on with one of your clients, or that you think could affect potential clients, write about it. So for current clients, send out a memo on that, write about one of these things, send out a memo. And for potential clients, you put it up on your website, right? It becomes a blog post, right? You write about this issue that could affect the industry where you serve clients. So here's an example of what we did here at Rocket Matter. So the idea, now before I go on to this example, any questions? Righty, so let me keep on going.
Tim,
so, yes.
There was one question that came in.
Okay.
The question is, do you recommend email newsletters or print newsletters?
So the first thing is an email newsletter. That's a really good question. Just internally, we decided maybe about 2 or 3 years ago that inboxes are inundated, right, with emails. Yet it's still effective. It's one of our most effective means of getting leads, so to speak, right? So we put on a webinar like something similar to this, or we put out an ebook, we email our list, and we build it up over time. And it's a really effective way of gathering those leads. And now, a couple of years ago, we decided, look, there are a few core folks, let's say law practice management experts, that we would love to have know what we put out. We think things that might be of content that might be useful to them. So if you put out a print newsletter, I say it's useful, but don't email, don't send it via mail to everyone that you know, or to think about who you want to be in your like sort of narrower circle, right? So if you have identified maybe 25 lawyers who you think can refer people to you, if you've identified another 30 potential clients, go ahead and create a print newsletter. And guess what? You can get the print newsletter content from your blog, right? So which is what we do. And you could put one out every quarter. So let's say you put out a print newsletter every month, put out a print newsletter every quarter. Good question. Here's how we did this. So we thought like, okay, legal practice management, manage your case online, manage your firm online. What does this have to do with paperless? Well, it allows people to store documents. Their entire communication, their entire interactions are now paperless. So paperless resonated with us. So we started to think about it and write about it a little bit. So it started with a blog series, right? We identified maybe 10 core things about paperless, and we created the series. And then one of our users, Rocket Matter users, is a lawyer who took his firm paperless. And we're like, hey, Andy, could you do a webinar with us? And he was just excited to do that. We put on a series of webinars for some bar associations on how to go paperless. He shared his story. And in that story, he shared protocols and naming conventions for files, worksheets for going paperless, things that are so enormously important for the whole process of going paperless that when we put this together in an ebook, from the blog post, from those worksheets, from those protocols, from Andy's story, it became one of our biggest driver of leads. So when I use leads is obviously a sales term, but leads is a potential client, right? So potential client leads, it's the same thing. So here you go. I was trying to get a website. One of my colleagues shared a website of a lawyer a couple of years ago. We were thinking of offering some marketing services. And we tried it, and it's something that didn't work out as well. But one of those lawyers, he has this beautiful website, and he created an ebook, and he has a banner ad on top of his website. Anyone clicked on that basically it's like, do you have this problem? Here are some things to do. And anyone clicks on that, they fill out a form. All of a sudden, he has a lead or a potential client that he can nurture with all of these pieces of content, right? So anyone can do this, right? If you're a solo attorney, if you're a small firm, you can do something like this. So here are some of the tools that you can use. Now, I did a tools presentation a couple of weeks ago, and let me tell you, it was supposed to be about 40 tools, and it just went on. And I am not as enamored of these 60 tools and 60 minutes thing that have become very popular, because you don't get a lot of really meaningful takeaways. So even though this might not be as sexy an exposure of tool collection of tools that you might see, it's things that you can use every day to create this content, to be informed, and get the word out. So I divided it into 4 categories. It was I sort of narrowed it down from about 9 categories. So you need to get informed, then you need to figure out how you create this content and how you share it, how you put the word out there, and then you need some productivity measures, and which I know is near and dear to Heidi's heart. And then you need to figure out a way to measure and find out what's resonating so you can build on that, right? So to get informed, you only need 2 things. One is Pocket. Pocket is a tool that that's basically a browser add-on. And every time you see something that resonates, instead of having 25, 30, 45 tabs open, just click on it. And the great thing about Pocket is that it allows you to add a tag. So let's say you're writing something, let's say you're a family lawyer and you want to write something, or you've come across an article on something related to child custody or something related to divorce, and you can have a tag for each of those. So when you're ready to write and read and write about this stuff, you can just sort it by tags. Feedly is super, super helpful. So Feedly is basically an RSS aggregator. And I have an example of how I use it. So whenever you come across a website or a blog or anything online that you find useful time after time after time, just add that, sign up for Feedly, it's just feedly.com, and then add that blog or website, the URL or that feed, into Feedly, and every time something new comes out, it will show up. So here's my Feedly, and I've divided it into things that are of interest to me, and you can divide them by categories. So the primary one that I use, obviously, is legal and access to justice that you see down there. And every morning, because I need to send some Twitter stuff out for Rocket Matter, or I need to write about things. I need to know what's going on. I know all of a sudden I know that artificial intelligence, everyone's talking about in legal. Everyone's talking about lean and agile concepts and how it applies to legal. It's something that I enjoy. So now every time I get someone from trusted sources, people that I found useful over and over again, put out something, it appears here. So how are we doing with time? Let's see. Oh wow. Let me run through a couple of these really quickly, and then I'll open it up for questions. Does that sound good, Heidi?
Yes, that's perfect.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So here are a couple other tools, a few other tools of where you can put this stuff, right? So obviously, just for your blog and for your website, WordPress is a no-brainer. I've done entire programs just on WordPress. If you need any information on this, tim@rocketmatter.com. I'd love to share with you. GoToWebinar, a must-have. SlideShare is an overlooked platform. Every time you put out a presentation, upload it to SlideShare, and SlideShare has a mechanism now where you can capture leads. If someone really loves what you do, you can capture their information right there. Vimeo for videos, and again, MailChimp. I've talked about newsletters. Use MailChimp. I think MailChimp is free for the first, I don't know, maybe 2,000 or 1,500 email addresses. So it's a great way to start and get used to sending out emails. And I would say emails If you do it once a month, that's plenty. I mean, if you have a lot of content and a lot of information, once a week is pretty good too. Here is a tip from emails. So assessing like tens of millions or maybe billions of emails, MailChimp did this survey or gathered data, not a survey, but gathered data, and divided it by industry. And for legal, what you want to do, this is the average. If you can try to attain at least this, how many people open your email and how many people click on at least one link in that email, right? So it's like 3 and 22%. And getting productive. So both Heidi and I have written books on Evernote. So we could do, and maybe Heidi, maybe you and I can do like a session on Evernote at some point. Use Evernote for capturing ideas, Dropbox for storing a lot of the information that you get and to share. Box is making a push into legal. So if you're looking to store client sensitive information, check out Box for sure. G Suite, which is Google just renamed, I think last week, their Google Apps, suite of Google Apps into G Suite. That's great for collaboration. So if you're working on something with another attorney or a marketing person or a paralegal or whoever, Google Docs is a great way to work on a single doc together. Slack, if you're communicating with these folks, it's a great way to communicate. Slack has cut down. We've had Slack at Rocket Matter for about maybe 15, 18 months, and it's cut down on our emails, inter-office email, by about 80%. So if you want to reduce your inbox within your firm or within the people that you speak to regularly, Slack is a great tool. Now, as important as knowing what to do is knowing what not to do, right? So outsourcing is essential. So when it comes to website design, when you hear things like, oh, you need to create a marketing persona, and oh, you need maybe Marketo or HubSpot, or hey, what is SEM? And you know what? You need to edit down this video into 2-minute clips. And whenever you hear all of this stuff, it's time to outsource it, and it's not that expensive. Upwork is a great platform for checking it out. So for the last few minutes, let's just touch on community a little bit. So you've created all this content, you've put it out there. Here is what another general counsel said, right? Not just about content and not just about RFPs, it's about building the relationship. And these are all the usual, right? You got LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and there's Avo, and there's a lot of different platforms. But I am going to posit that Twitter is a lot more useful for building professional relationships. And why? It's easy. Every time you see something, every time you come across something in your Feedly that you saved in Pocket that really resonated, you're like, let me share this. And when you share it on Twitter, you mention whoever it was that wrote it or who spoke to you about this, and all of a sudden you've started a relationship. The relationship, unlike Facebook and LinkedIn, is a one-way thing. So in Facebook, it's reciprocal, right? So if you want to be a friend with someone, they have to accept your friendship. If you want to connect with someone on LinkedIn, they could accept or reject it. On Twitter, you just follow someone. And then you at them, and at them meaning you mention them when you talk about something. When you write about something that they talked about, you quote them. Kevin O'Keefe, who does Lex blog, he's really big on this, is as using those blogging to create relationships. And part of that is writing and mentioning the people that you're quoting or that you got the inspiration from in that post. And finally, it's this enormous public forum. So if there's a Pulse article on LinkedIn, or if there's an article in your personal Facebook, you have to actually log into those things to see them for most people. And for Twitter, it's everything that you do is public. So your reputation is being expanded and expanded. And I wanted to share a quick story. When I left a law firm in 2008, I started a consultancy. I knew that I needed to get on Twitter. I didn't know how the heck to do that. I didn't know why I should be doing it. And one day I just sat down and I'm like, let me research this. And I came across a podcast with Kevin O'Keefe and Bob Ambrosi and a couple others. Those were the first two follows. Something clicked. Those were the first two follows that I had on Twitter. They've become good friends, and over the course of the years, I've come to understand how Twitter can be such a useful relationship, not just generating but nurturing and boosting platform. So the only thing I would say about social media right now is when you're on Twitter and when you're on Facebook, if you have create a Facebook page for your law firm, a great way to expand your base, your followers, the people that get to know you, is to spend like $50 every now and then to boost a post. Anything that you find that you think could be useful, when you boost a post on these platforms, it allows you to choose exactly who you want to boost it to, right? Whose stream do you want it to appear in? Is it bar association folks? Is it folks who are just other family law attorneys? Who do you want it to appear to? It's a great use of $50. Social tools, all you need is buffer. You can add Hootsuite that has a little bit more analytics. Managed Flitter is something that if you're on Twitter for a while, it will allow you to go in there and say, look, who's tweeting too much, who's not active anymore, and just go ahead and unfollow them. It allows you to clean up your So here is where I want to talk about SEO, but we could save that for another time. And if you have any questions about how you can promote further your or some of the best practices, like really basic on SEO, check out legalproductivity.com. It's a blog that we put out, and we put a lot of information on this. I don't like to end any webinar without that deals with anything online, technology, social, whatever, without saying that you should pay attention to security. So 3 practices that you should get involved with is use a strong password. Whenever there's an opportunity for 2-factor authentication, use it. And if there is an opportunity to encrypt something, so for instance, if you use Evernote and you're like, whoa, this information that I just put in there, I don't think I want anyone to have access to this. Encrypt it. You can highlight it, add an additional level of encryption to it. And finally, in order to do all of that, use a password manager. I use 1Password from the last 2 years, and I can't imagine my life without it. My passwords are crazy. I mean, I don't know. Someone asked me what my Netflix login was the other day, and I'm like, I don't know. I have to go and check it out. It's just some random constructed numbers and letters. So that's it. Go out there. It's not that. It doesn't take as much time as you think. It's not as difficult as you think. But it's important to create content. It's important to use that to help build and nurture your community. And I think that wraps it up.
Tim, thank you. We do have one question that has come in, and the question is, why do you recommend Vimeo over YouTube for sharing video content?
So YouTube is a platform that it's the same complaint that people have for Twitter, right? It's a platform that could sort of descend into a lot of commenting and a lot of conversations that are very troll oriented. Now, in Twitter, it's easy to get rid of that, right? You can just block them. And on YouTube, there are opportunities for that also. But I would say, why not have them in both? So that's something that we do. It's a good question. If you're wondering, should I just leave it on Vimeo or YouTube? Think about the philosophy of it. Do you want to be discovered on YouTube? Do you want when people go there to see you, or are you using videos in order to help promote your site, right? So are you going to embed those videos on your site? So this is where they come to see it. So it really depends on what you want to do. But that, if you're unsure, I'd say just put them in both places.
Tim, you mentioned earlier Angela Duckworth, and I just wanted to note that her book is actually called Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. So if anyone would like to pick that up.
Hey, have you read it, Heidi?
You know what? I haven't, but one of my colleagues has, and she says it's excellent.
It's amazing. Yeah,
And
she's
I
on.
need to read it. It's on my list.
Right. So, and if you listen to podcasts, she's on every other podcast.
Yes,
right?
I've heard her a number of times. It's
right. And while you're mentioning books, you know, one of the things I mentioned really briefly here in terms of news, a big thing that you're hearing now is how to apply lean and agile methodologies to your law practice so that you can identify bottlenecks in your practice. It's a way to visualize like your processes, right? So you can just get a bunch of Post-it notes and just put it up on the wall and say, this is how I do this. And after a while, you're like, oh my goodness, this is where everything is sort of being stuck, or maybe this is what I can change. It takes a bit of getting used to, but it's amazing. And I would say that for solos, especially if you're just going out, check out the Lean Manifesto, and it's and the Lean Startup. Actually, it's a really, really good book to read. And there are a couple of, if you're interested in this topic, again, just shoot me an email, and I will recommend. There are like maybe 3 or 4 attorneys out there that do this, and that it's sort of taking off. And it's not one of these things that are just a fly by night. These are methodologies and philosophies and practices that have gone on for decades. So yeah, check it out.
We do have another question that's come in, and the question is whether it's worth hiring a marketing consultant to reshape marketing efforts, or to serve as your own general contractor and hire people through a site like Upwork or Fiverr.
Yeah. So I had this question from the attorney I had dinner with a couple of nights ago, and my initial response was like, I don't know, because the question was framed with like, Tim, if I wanted to hire a marketing agency or a consultant in the legal space, who do I hire? And I said, well, it really does depend, right? It depends on what you want to do. I know several really trusted marketing lawyers who've become marketers. People like the folks at Attorney Sync with Guy Sakalakis, who's, if you want anything related to SEO, he's the guy. If you want anything related to blogging, Kevin O'Keefe is the guy. If you want anything related to like social, the guy Guy Alvarez in New York City, who does Good to Be Social, that he's the guy. So there are a lot of, it depends on what you want, but yeah, the ideal thing is to maybe get a marketing person, an agency, a consultant who can help you manage this. That person might not be able to do everything, but who can help you to manage some of the stuff and make recommendations. And again, these folks that I just mentioned, the reason why I'm able to mention them as trusted sources is because I met them through Twitter. And then I met them I followed up with we met them at conferences, and then then I started to follow what they had to say. And these guys, Mockingbird is another one, but these guys are really, really spot on. They tell it like it is, and the relationships that I've gained through just interacting with them socially, whether it's be online or at conferences or just email. It's allowed me to be able to recommend them. So yeah, definitely get someone, but do your due diligence. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of legal marketers out there, and some are obviously better than others, and some are better suited to what you want. There's another for large law firms, for instance. There's these guys called Great Jakes, and I think they cater mainly to really large law firms. So even if you like them, they might not be the best thing for you. So yeah. Twitter is a good place to do some due diligence on this.
Okay. One final question here, and that is, do you have any tips for making sure your website targets the correct geographic community? So for example, the state in which your firm practices.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. We could do a really, as a matter of fact, we have our marketing director here. He's so very good at this. And if you're ever interested in doing a half an hour with him, let me know. I'll hook you guys up.
Perfect. We're in.
So yeah. So one of the things with local, it starts with what you decide is the URL you decide on, right? So if you are a family practice lawyer in South Carolina, you want all of that in your slug, right? So it starts with the slug. So you're not just
can you explain what a slug is?
So it starts with the URL or your domain. So if I'm Tim Baran and I'm in South Carolina and say Tim Baran Law, I'm very all important about myself, and it's going to be Tim Baran Law. That's not useful. No one will find you in South Carolina. I would want to rename it Tim Baran Divorce Law in South Carolina, and that would be my domain, right? That would be the URL. Now, I could also purchase something called timbaranlaw.com and redirect it to that, right? So I will have a URL to point that's a handy URL to give someone. The other thing that you want to do is there are best practices for SEO. So a couple of them include, one, create, in the old days, someone would say, stuff all of your keywords in as many pages and blog posts as you can. That's not good practice. First of all, it wasn't good practice back then, and it's especially not good practice now. What you want to do is identify a core 12 to 25 keywords. And when people talk about keywords, it's not just a word, it's a phrase, right? Divorce lawyer in South Carolina. If you're specializing in child custody, if you also do different aspects within that family law practice that you want to be known for, create a page for each of those keywords on your website. And each of those pages will now function as a cornerstone piece of content for that one keyword. And then any blog post that you create or any additional content that you create that deals with this, you add an additional keyword to it. It could be around the same, but you make it what they call a long tail keyword, and then link that page to your evergreen, to your cornerstone content. But think about what and again, when you think about these terms, and when you think this deeply about what your website should be like and the kind of terms that you need, and there are tools out there, like I think SpyFu is one of them, but there are tools out there that you can look at and you can enter let's say a top 30 keyword that you think you need to optimize your website for. And then you will see what each keyword is worth, meaning this is how many people enter this keyword on any given day or any given month or week. So maybe this is the one I should be optimizing for, not this one that only 5 people searched for in the last year. Right? So there are a lot of different ways that you can go about it. A quick way that you can is once you've created this page, make sure that you include headers. So headers in like a WordPress site, and the one good thing about WordPress is that you can do this all on your own. If this is something that you are interested in and that you want to spend some weekend hours on, once you have a WordPress has what's called a WYSIWYG backend, which is what you see is what you get, meaning that it's not HTML code that you have to create all of these things in. You could just type in, like just the way we speak, create a header, highlight it, click on header, and it will insert what's called an H2 tag, and those are really important. Google looks for H2 tags. Another tip is whenever you insert an image, include the keyword as an alt tag in that image. So there are a lot of different ways that you can go about optimizing your site for the keywords that you want. And local, it's a really, really good question. Local, it is all about local. I wish I had Mike Naselli close by. He would give like a really nice, succinct 5-minute speech right now on how important local is and what you can do about local.
Tim, thank you. That was great. Can you just very quickly give us the name of the tool that you just cited for researching keyword effectiveness? Is it something
Okay. So I know SpyFu, SPYFU, is a tool that some use, but there are other tools. And and Heidi, you know, when you put this up, if you want any tools or anything that we talked about that you want to add as links in the write up, let me know. I'll get some really useful links from Mike and some of the things that we talked about.
Okay, great. Well, we'll put them in there.
All right.
But we're going to wrap up, and I would just want to thank you, Tim, for the excellent presentation. And you've really given us a number of takeaways that folks can implement immediately as part of their marketing strategies. We will provide a recording and slides on our website at maslowmep.org. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and we'll hope that you'll tune in again next month for another practical webinar for busy lawyers.
Awesome. This was great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.